pretty good. Hello all. No microphone because Facebook Live doesn't seem to allow it. So we're just now 16 feet away from the iPad, but the wind is pretty low, 3 or 4 miles an hour, so I expect you'll be able to hear me all right. I was asked a question and I thought I'd answer it in video so I could just talk instead of type it out. I don't know if there's an awful lot to demonstrate here. Maybe really just exploration of terms and our understanding of them and the application of those to our discipline. And I'm just going to hang out. The reason I'm doing it live is if there's follow-up questions or similar questions, related questions, maybe I can address them. I set my iPad here, so maybe I can see if there's a question, because I won't be able to hear if you're asking, but type it out if you have one. And I'm going to just settle into my practice here for a moment, and then I'll repeat the question as I remember it, and then start talking about some kind of answer. Anyway, I'm Steve Watson. Here I am at Someday Farm, little northeastern USA martial arts studio, philosophy studio. So the question was, how does Zhuāng relate to Nèijiāquán? Or perhaps we could say, how does Nèijiāquán relate to Zhuāng? So in order to discuss it, we'd have to have some kind of understanding of terms, if not agreement on terms. And generally speaking, I think maybe the short answer is that Nèijiāquán is an umbrella term under which Zhuāng fits. I'm in a version of the posture called Zhuāng. Often it's translated as embrace posture, or stake holding, or post holding, wuchi standing, a bunch of different sort of derivations of understandings of the Chinese term. I always think of it as a sort of cosmogenesis kind of practice. There's a lot of good reasons to do it. Your reasons to do it, the ones that you've come across, that you've found an affinity for, or were explicitly taught, may differ in your, allow you to differ in your views about what this is for. But I find this to be a very base practice. This is like analogous to one of the 3 sauces in French cooking, or one of the very few tools in the carpenter's tool bag at all times. You know, maybe pencil, ruler, and saw. Maybe, I don't know, something like that. Maybe hammer, square, and pencil, I guess. In other words, I don't find you're going to get very far, very effectively, very efficiently in your Nèijiāquán practice without some Zhuāng, and of course, really just some sort of Zhuāng. Everybody thinks that they have the right type, the right system, the right lineage, the right details. It's all fine. I've probably been taught, I don't know, 18, 20 different, specific versions of it, and certainly encountered many others and played at another few dozen that, of course, I had a less than complete understanding of. But the general idea is to stand in an even stance, meaning not favoring one leg or the other with your weight, and remain outwardly still, and generally following the principles that we'd expect to find in Nèijiāquán, such as good structure, good upright posture, no excess tension. So I suppose I can do this in profile a little bit so you have an idea, but I don't think anybody's here to learn how to do the posture, and I'm certainly not here to teach it. I certainly spent a lot of time doing it and teaching it, and I've been in a number of classes where this is the warm-up, this is the first 45 minutes of the class, first 20 minutes of the class, first half hour, before we get to doing the Dalu or what have you. So Zhuāng is a practice that's often done to help develop sung, to help develop patience, to help develop strength, to help develop reserves of qi, to help transform the treasures, to help cultivate patience, to help seek and integrate the principles as we understand them in our base art or the art that we're considering when we do our Zhuāng practice. So, people may be doing this who practice Baji Chuan or Tai Chi Chuan or Xingyi Chuan or Bagua Zhang. I had a Tui Na teacher teaching us this at one point, who wasn't really doing anything martial, but again, their base art, Tui Na, really just followed all the principles. Of course, I'm broad brush strokes here, but followed all the principles of Tai Chi Chuan, all the principles you'd expect to hear in a class on Qigong or Kim Han, perhaps, or maybe even an Aikido class. So Zhuāng for some people is about building energy, the stores of energy. For some people it's releasing excess tension. For some it's cultivating or inculcating patience. For some of it's a strength development. Maybe that's a strength of character, maybe a strength of body, maybe just a strength of legs. Certainly for many teachers, it's a practice of separating wheat from chaff. Let's see who's got the goods before I give you the greats. So it brings us to the idea of what's Nèijiāquán. It's a term that means the internal arts of Tai Chi Chuan, the internal arts of China. I would kind of extend it to include internal arts that are non-martial, I guess, or certainly non-sinocentric. As I mentioned, Aikido feels like a Nèijiāquán to me in my practice of it, in my understanding of it, although I understand like it historically doesn't fit that doesn't make sense. Tui Na doesn't fit it, it's not a Chuan. But again, in my experience, my practice, my studies of that, my exposure to that, it's really telling us to do the same stuff and telling us not to do the same stuff we're not supposed to do in a practice of Nèijiāquán that's accurately fitting, with that categorization. So, firstly, my understanding, my research has shown me that Nèijiāquán is never a term applied to the Nèijiāquán arts by the Nèijiāquán players. It's really a term that kind of occurs by default. If you develop a word for flood, you've kind of developed the idea of drought, and then you look around for a word that means that idea that now exists, right? This is a basic Tai Chi 2 kind of a lesson, philosophically and etymologically, I guess. And so it's my understanding that the external arts were first called external by whomever, perhaps with a focus on outcome, focus on muscular strength and leverage and angles and so forth. And then, once we have that kind of idea, maybe it's called external at that point, or, Nèijiāquán or something. Then it says, well, what isn't that? What exists in contrast to that? What's the polar opposite of that? And then we end up with Nèijiāquán, which as a term generally applies to the three sisters, right? So those are the arts of Tai Chi Chuan, Xing Yi Chuan, Bagua Zhang. But I find that it applies to, Baji Chuan and Yi Chuan, for example. Tui Nai, Aikido, as I said, fit my understanding of it. I know it's not going to be a scholarly fit, but it fits. It's a practical idea in my practice of those things to take what I understand from my specific practices of authentic Nèijiāquán and say, well, you know what? Pretty much everything I learned there fits into how I'm dealing with another body in Tui Na, for example, or in Pui Shu, or in Yi Chuan, for example. So how does Nèijiāquán fit with Zhuāng? How does Zhuāng fit with Nèijiāquán? I'd say that you can't go wrong by doing Zhuāng. Certainly, you could do it your way, the way that you learned, where the hands are here, or the hands are here, or the hands are held this way, or at this level, or it's done seated or stepping. It's all fine. I'm just doing an example here while I talk, so there's something visual to do, since I'm doing a video rather than a podcast. And Nèijiāquán is these arts that kind of fit these categories of relative slow moving, alignment with gravity, no excess tension, whether that's emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, and generally starting with physical and lesson 101. Sort of suffused with consciousness and intent. So they are arts in which we practice reflexivity. There are arts in which we practice consciousness and suffusing the being with consciousness, coordinating the elements of the being under intent and will, and driving towards the direction of your effort. If it's a punch or a block or whatever it happens to be. So Nèijiāquán is described, is a term used to describe these arts, which are interested in the internal mechanics, the internal experience, the internal consciousness, more so than with the results of the external action. They're not without concern for results, just as like Shuai Jiao or something, which we might call a Weijiachuan art, is not unconcerned with where your mind is and how your breathing is, but it's certainly more concerned with, did you flip the guy in his head? Did you do it as violently as you could, as fast as you could, as efficiently as you could? So I find, and I think many people find, that Zhuāng is an indispensable facet of any Nèijiāquán practice. But not any given Nèijiāquán practice will emphasize Zhuāng, and certainly not any given lineage or school or system will emphasize Zhuāng practice. But Zhuāng practice, I think, will, in fact, I'm quite certain, cannot help but to improve any Nèijiāquán practice. And that improvement may be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, etc. The reasoning behind doing it certainly might have to do with relaxation. It might have to do with developing character and will. It might have to do with developing structure. It might have to do with developing stance or strength. It might have to do with developing emotional equilibrium. It may have to do with developing, like a Peng shape, for example, a Peng Jin kind of energy. All kinds of different reasons to do it, but I haven't found any sort of bad reasons to do it. I'm just in. If somebody wants to do it and they have an argument for why it should be done or how often or in what way and through their system, I'm in. I'm interested. I find it engaging, enlivening, challenging, enjoyable, and quite simple, but not at all easy. So I'm going to just check in, see if there's any questions. I obviously doubt it because there never seem to be any. Then I think that we'll finish up. Yeah, of course, no questions. So anyway, thank you all. Appreciate it.